what data really offers a business or a person?
I would say when it is done right, it offers peace of mind. And what I always recommend my customers, and this is something that we have immensely benefited from, is...
All right, welcome to the $1 Million Sellers Podcast. Today we have Krishna on the call with Saras Analytics. I may have not pronounced that correctly, but I think I got your name right.
You did, absolutely, Nick. Nice to meet you. I'm doing great and glad to be here.
Awesome, man. We're glad to have you. And I always enjoy meeting people for the first time, like on the podcast. Always pretty cool. And you know, I do want to mention the members. This is a partner that we're bringing on. So usually we have the members come on, but occasionally we have partners come on and kind of share their story as well and tell us who they are as a person and how that led to them, you know, getting involved in this business and how they manage that kind of work-life balance as well, because we really harp on that in the community. And it's always good to get the partner's perspective on that stuff as well. So for those that don't know anything about you, like just go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us how you got here.
Sure, Nick. This is Krishna Poda here. I'm a co-founder CEO at a company called Saras Analytics. We are one data partner for brands, agencies, and aggregators. Founded the business about 7 years back. We do software development, build software products, and we offer consulting services on the data front for these companies.
And Krishna, could you tell us a little bit about maybe, I don't know, like what's like a big accomplishment you guys have done, or like a milestone as you look back on your 7-year journey that you guys are really proud of?
The first thing that comes to my mind is we are a bootstrapped company to date. We started off with 2 people, and we are a team of about 180.
Nice.
And managed to build software products, become profitable, and do that the bootstrapped way. Hasn't been easy. So if I were to look back and look at one thing that I really feel good about, it would be that.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, definitely something good to look back on. Are you and your business partner both located in the States, or, you know, I know you guys have some people over in India handling some work, but you're in Austin, Texas.
Yeah, I'm based in Austin, Texas, and a few of my team members are based in the US as well. But predominantly, most of the team's back in India, and so is my co-founder.
Okay.
So I, in my role, oversee product and consulting, and he looks after growth and marketing.
Awesome. All right. Yeah. Sounds like you guys got a good team going.
Won't have it any other way.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about you. Like, how did you become this, you know, this data guy? Like, how did you get involved in this business? Was this like a passion of yours, you know, back in the day, and you decided to pursue it, or what's the story there?
Yeah, I actually moved to the US back in 2006 to do my PhD in databases. That didn't go according to plan, but started working immediately after that. And since then, been working with data in some form or fashion. And my most recent stint prior to starting Saras Analytics was working with a company called Oracle. So a big enterprise company based out of the Bay Area. And I was an enterprise architect there. And my experience there over about 4 or 5 years really fueled my desire to, you know, go a little deeper into the space and build something out that can really help small to mid-sized companies.
Okay. So what was that like for you, kind of making that switch from, you know, working for Oracle, this nice, probably felt pretty secure in your job, but maybe you wanted some other things. Like, how did you go about taking that leap? You know, because like here, you hear all people always talking about that kind of fear of letting go of that security and going after entrepreneurship. How did you navigate that?
Sure, that's a great question, Nick. If I think about it seriously, I would say there wasn't a whole lot of thought that went into when we jumped in. It was a case of jumping in with the desire of wanting to do something with a broad idea. But over the years and over years of experience, you sort of narrow down your focus and figure out what your ideal customer profile is, so on and so forth. But yeah, got into it, I guess, not knowing. We just finished our 7 years, by the way, and one of the things that I was telling my colleagues was I was stupid enough to get into it looking back. But given how things have gone over the years, there's been a great amount of learning.
Nice.
So fear, not so much, but a huge learning curve.
Okay. Were you, I'm guessing, but married at the time when you started the business?
I was just married, actually.
Just married. So like, did you know, what was that conversation with your wife like, you know?
It was more a case of asking for forgiveness rather than asking for permission.
Okay.
But so I was, I guess, spending some time trying to figure out how to get things going while I was still working. And it took maybe a year or two to really get into the thick of things.
Okay.
Didn't have much going on from a business standpoint at that time, but at least it was about time for me to take a full leap. It did take maybe a year or so.
Okay.
To warm up.
So you did a little bit probably on the side, you know, after your regular job and stuff, and so it sounds like a year or two in, you guys took the full leap, though.
Yep.
Amazing, very cool, man. So how did it go those first few years? I mean, it sounds like you guys have your business pretty dialed in right now. Did you always start with that D2C audience in mind as your target and then expand to the Amazon marketplace, or how did that go?
Initially, it was a case of wanting to make data easy for mid-sized companies. We weren't necessarily focused on e-commerce as a category.
Okay.
That happened over time. So I would say the first almost 2.5 years just went into doing a ton of pro bono work. And we worked with digital media companies. We worked with a few manufacturing companies. We worked with a couple of marketplaces. We worked with a couple of brands just to get a sense for e-commerce, the digital selling portion of it. Because my entire experience prior to that was in enterprise software and big enterprise IT. So I wasn't necessarily an e-commerce person, right? So so there was a lot of learning on the business front that we had to go through, both me and my co-founder. But both of us come from the data and analytics background, so we had that sort of figured out. It's just that for us to narrow down on the areas that we want to focus on, the verticals that we want to focus on, took some time. So about, I would say, 3 years into running the business is when we started working more closely with the direct-to-consumer brands. And when the pandemic started to take off, we accidentally found out that we have one of the better solutions in the market for Amazon sellers and aggregators. So that's, I would say, Corona was the time where we started to look at Amazon and the Amazon ecosystem more seriously.
Okay.
And since we have gone very, very deep into it.
So how did that play out? Was that Amazon businesses or e-commerce people reaching out to you to be like, hey, you know, can you guys do e-commerce as well? And then you kind of got into it that way, or did you guys seek it out first?
So it was, I would say, a coincidence. One of the biggest aggregators in the world reached out and started to try our product. Okay. And when we saw the sign up happen, we were like, what is going on here? And then started to look into the industry a little bit more, what was happening on that front, so on and so forth. And then we reached out, spoke to them, understood the problem statement. It was quite abundantly clear at that point in time, especially heading into, I would say this was maybe 5 or 6 months before COVID.
Okay.
COVID hit. And when we saw that one of the biggest aggregators is looking to use our product, that was the moment where we're like, okay, there's this huge untapped market for us that we need to pursue, and we have not looked at that seriously. If we were a funded company, perhaps we would have, gone to market slightly differently, but being bootstrapped, didn't allow us to, explore multiple markets at the same time. But
Okay.
yeah, so that I would say if I were to pick one moment, it would be that.
Okay. Yeah, and that's an interesting scenario to me, because I think there's this gap for entrepreneurs, especially in the Amazon world, when it comes to data and what data can do, and what a service provider like yours can allow us to do. And it could be all the way, it could be as small as let's see, yesterday or a couple days ago, I was in Zapier, and we were setting up a integration for direct mail, right? So we're talking about things of I want to send out a piece of direct mail to a customer. So I want to put in the name, the address, regular things that a lot of people wouldn't think about automating possibly. Maybe they even think it's ridiculous, because they're maybe they only have a few orders a month or something. But I think there's immense power, even if you do only have a few orders a month. You probably have 20 other things in your business you could automate. And now you've, instead of just saving yourself maybe 5 to 10 minutes a month, now you've saved yourself an hour a month. And I think there's this huge gap in understanding that. And that's, the gap, the knowledge gap that I faced, that I tried to overcome, because I wanted to have a lifestyle business where I could be with my kids, be with my wife, surf when the waves are good. And that's really what I see a solution like yours offering. I know there's so much more when it comes to scalability and real business stuff, knowing your numbers and things like this. But I really think there's just so much potential to really improve people's quality of life, right? Which I think is what most people are after. And I would say most, if not all people, in our group are really after. I think that's what we're all chasing. What's your perspective on all that, and what data really offers a business or a person?
I would say when it is done right, it offers peace of mind and clarity of thought. And that's really what we are after, right? So especially if you're a small business, you could be a one-person shop, or you could be a 20% company doing $20 million in revenue. Every minute of every employee's time is critical, right? Because you've got a small team, you're trying to accomplish a lot, you're trying to go against the bigger players and win market share. And the last thing that I would want those expensive, critical resources to do is spend a ton of time manually wrangling data, churning that data into in an Excel spreadsheet, and spending a ton of time just trying to understand basic tier 1 KPIs, right? But imagine a world where you have the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 KPIs as well, automated, refreshed every hour. Then you get that time back. You can start looking at the business very differently. You can have discussions with your partners, with your stakeholders within the company differently, because now both of them are looking at the same source of truth that they both agree on. And that makes, in my opinion, collaboration a lot easier. And whenever there is good collaboration within team members, the outcomes are more often than not positive, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a good explanation, and I really like how you mentioned the peace of mind and clarity of mind, because I think that's what I really look for in those numbers. And I think the other gap that a lot of us face, including myself, is knowing what the hell to focus on, right? We get all this data, all these numbers in front of us, and we create these scorecards, and it's all right, man, you've got 20 things on here. How are you going to handle this? Do you even have people to handle this if things go wrong? And that's where I really fell short as a solo entrepreneur back in the day. It's
right.
Yeah, you can't, you can't, you're not ready for this, basically, is kind of what I figured out. But now our team's bigger. We have multiple businesses. We have to have all that information. And that's actually how I found out about you guys and why I hired you guys. And I like the data solution that you guys offer. I like that it's, you've got all those D2C connections as well, so that's going to scale with us. And then the consulting arm as well. I mean, if you guys would have just given me that data, I'd be like, all right, now I have to go hire someone else, right? And it was really cool that you guys can come in and like consult and not just give me like templates, really, like, hey, here, just set this up. Like, you guys are actually having a conversation with me. You're giving me some default stuff to look at, but your guys also ask, like, hey, what do you want? And how are you calculating that now, if you are? And the problem statement too, and I hear this when you talk, like, you seem to have like a framework for data in your mind that a lot of us don't have, like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 KPIs and stuff like that. I think the audience would really benefit from that. Like, I don't know if it's possible for you to kind of in a few short minutes, like, summarize how would someone in our position go about, prioritizing the data they need and organizing that. Like, would you have any advice you could give anyone that's listening on that?
Certainly. When I talk about tier 1 KPIs, I talk about the usual suspect, right? How my sales doing? How my ads performing? How much inventory do I have on hand? Am I running out of inventory? So on and so forth, right? Typically, if you look at advertising spend-related data, you get that from the Amazon Ad Console. If you want sales data, you're going to get that from Seller Central reports, right? And then if you are trying to look at how are my ads performing on an hourly basis, you're going to get that from Marketing Stream. All of these, if you look at it, are discrete silos of data. But once you stitch these things together, now you start to see some interesting trends happen, right? If I'm spending more money on advertising, how quickly am I able to move my inventory, right? How are my sales responding to increased ad spend, both on the organic and inorganic side of the house? Which keywords drive the best customers? What percentage of my customers are repeat, right?
Which products keywords drive the best customers? Wow. Yeah, that's good stuff, man.
So there are a bunch of these. Go ahead.
No, you keep going. I was just really blown away by that. Like, I want to know more about keyword. Like, if I can identify what keywords drive the best customers. I never even thought about that.
Right. That's the interesting part, right? Because Amazon has a lot of this data that they expose via APIs, and unless you have a software or you're looking to write support for these APIs, bring everything together and know how to stitch it together, some of these nuanced KPIs are hard to emerge out because they're all sitting in different places, right? And you need to marry all of that data together. And that's what we do here. And that's where our consulting team comes in. So the examples that I gave you are just a few, but there are many like that, which for instance, if you're looking to forecast inventory, you have a history of your ad spend, you also have a history of sales of your products, and you're trying to figure out, okay, if I increase my advertising budget by X percentage, how quickly am I going to move my inventory? So that's a forecasting problem, right? So all of those scenarios can start to emerge, but I would say those are all tier 2, tier 3 problems. But if customers are spending a lot of time just getting basic ad and sales metrics, that's really difficult for them to go a little deeper into their business and explore opportunities for optimization.
Okay. Yeah, it's like, is it possible? I mean, it sounds like the answer is yes, but like, if I wanted to see what keywords drive the best customers, how would I do that? What am I connecting there to see that trend?
What are you connecting there? So there is a new service called as Amazon Marketing Cloud, wherein you can see what advertising you're running, where are customers landing, and what their journey is, right? And after they purchase, what their purchase patterns are after that. And once you stitch all of that data together, you'd start to see how is your advertising and your customer behavior linked to each other. So for
Okay.
instance, I need 6 touch points with the customer before they make a purchasing decision, right? That's just one example. Or I need to hit a customer with a sponsored product ad, and then take them down this journey to get the best result from my advertising effort. So that sort of data is now available in certain Amazon APIs. So
Okay.
there is some work to do to get to the answer that I was mentioning, but it's certainly possible.
Well, I'm gonna tell. I've got Om Prakash on my project, so I'm putting that on our ClickUp
Okay.
list. um,
All right.
but yeah, man, that's really cool. Like, my idea in my head was like a little more simple. I was thinking like the relationship between bids and impressions, like stuff like that is super interesting to me, and like stuff that I'm always trying to connect the dots on. And teach other people too, to like understand like, hey, you're going to hit this floor or this ceiling, with this bid range here, and understanding that,
Right.
and like, how to manipulate it and work within it. But it sounds like there's some other things as well. I mean, that reminds me more of like understanding a customer journey on a website, right? Like that's stuff that,
Correct.
We just haven't really been able to do on Amazon until recently, as they've rolled out more
Correct.
data.
Yep. Indeed. In fact, if you look at the direct-to-consumer side, the data is all siloed with different service providers, but with Amazon, all of that data is with Amazon, right? So I'm super excited about the entire ecosystem because Amazon's making more and more APIs available. And the more APIs they make available, the more data they make available, it creates a bigger opportunity for sellers to optimize and sell more, actually.
Yeah, absolutely, man. How are there some things you would recommend like all sellers kind of have data wise? And maybe if you focused in on some potential like other automations, right? Like what are some other things people could automate because they have this data stream populating regularly?
Yeah. The first thing I would recommend to every seller is to own your data, right? Because there are many APIs. So for instance, I've had customers who have been in Amazon for about 10 years and they're looking to sell their business. And when the time was right to sell their business and they had investors wanting to look at the numbers, it literally took them 6 months to get the data in a format that they could then go back and share with the investors for due diligence purposes, right? You never know when opportunity comes knocking on the door, and it's always good to be prepared. So I would say take ownership of data. There are a lot of APIs that only go back 90 days. So if you're trying to look at advertising performance from previous year, you wouldn't have that data necessarily at a very granular level unless you use an API, pull the data, store that data in a warehouse, and then use that to do, for example, seasonality measurement and so on and so forth. So I'd say take ownership of the data. And just experience the beauty of having your business reports fully automated, and have your Monday morning meetings or Monday morning review sessions for the week focused on the KPIs available on the dashboard. And I'm pretty sure within 6 months period, you would start seeing improvements in your business performance, right? So taking ownership of the data, making sure that the important KPIs that they need to track for their business, that they track today, right? It's just that tracking might be happening once a week because they're not spending, it takes time to get to that stage, right? So by automating all of that and making that a habit for the owner or the seller as well as their team, can definitely yield positive results.
Okay. Awesome. And what about like data? I might not be using the correct term here, but like one thing I've honestly kind of never really fully wrapped my head around is like some data in Amazon, it takes like 2 days or something to get settled properly or reconciled properly.
Yep.
So like, how do you go about identifying those scenarios and understanding like how to if the data isn't right for 2 days after it's populating because it could be reconciled. Like, how do I go about setting a schedule to monitor that, knowing that piece of information?
Got it. I'm assuming that one of the prime candidates where this sorts of retroactive reconciliation happening is your business reports, right, Nick? Is that what you're
Yes.
thinking about?
Yeah. Yeah. For example, like landed cost of goods could be one, right? Like,
Yeah. 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 So it's a two-part problem. One, there is Amazon documentation on how these reports run, and second, I would say tribal knowledge of having worked with the APIs, having looked at the data, having worked with thousands of sellers at this point in time, uh, is to know what are the latencies that are typically there for some of these reports and APIs, and bake that into the product so that even if the numbers are changing retroactively, they get pulled in. And that's where automation really comes in, right? If I'm downloading that report and putting it in my laptop, and the reports change after a couple of days, the sellers are likely to go back and pull that data again, right? So with automation, by adding a lot of lookbacks and things of that nature, we try and get the number as close to what's available at any given point in time at Amazon.
okay. So how do you guys stay on top of like what Amazon is rolling out? Like, since you guys are, partnered with them as a service provider, like, do you guys catch wind of like new things that are getting rolled out that's going to be of interest to sellers, or what's that like?
Yeah. So there's so part of it is constantly reviewing their release notes and emails that we get from Amazon about product announcement, API announcement, attending their webinars, so on and so forth. We also have 3 product managers who are dedicatedly looking at some of these APIs. If you look at the Amazon ecosystem, there are at least 200 APIs that they support across the board. And we are one of the few who support pretty much every API that Amazon provides across their advertising, Seller Central, and Vendor Central ecosystems. So at least 3 product managers, a few developers, and it's a combined effort from all of them to make sure that we have the most exhaustive support for these APIs available for any seller who wants to use this. So some customers are heavy users of the advertising APIs. Some customers use our pricing APIs to figure out what pricing strategies are working, what are not working, change the pricing and see and analyze how inventory is moving, so on and so forth. Some are interested in tying sessions and conversions reports with sales and inventory. So it's every seller, every aggregator, every agency have their own way of analyzing analyzing the data that Amazon provides and, tuning that to the needs of their business. And that's where, having a customizable solution is really key in my opinion. And that's what we're focused on, right? So yeah, if a customer wants a template, we're more than happy to give the templates that we have to the customer, but we are also there to tweak the flow so that it fits their internal use cases and the tools that they're familiar with.
So I got pretty interested when you mentioned the pricing strategies, and especially with like thinking of AI and like where AI is at these days, and the possibility of like being able to just plug it into this data solution as well, and get some suggestions from it. Are you guys? I think during our onboarding call, someone like mentioned you guys are doing stuff with AI. Is that right?
Yes, so we will be making some announcements later this year on that front. One of the tools that we have is called as Watchdog, and Watchdog. Think of Watchdog as a tool that does anomaly detection and alerts you when certain KPIs are really falling off the thresholds, right? So that way, if you're looking at a business and if you have 50 KPIs, so take yourself as an example, Nick. So let's say you have a few brands that you're operating, and let's assume you have about 40 KPIs for each brand, and you have 4 of these brands. So you're looking at about 160 KPIs. So you get up in the morning, you look at the dashboard, you can spend 30 minutes to see how the business is doing overall, but we also give you another view into the business, which is this anomaly detection setup, wherein we highlight the key KPI movements within the business. So that way you can look at, all right, let's say your sales went down, we'll give you the top 3 or 4 reasons why that may have happened. So that way we are cutting down the time that you need to analyze and see why sales had dropped, right? So that way you can get to acting on that insight quickly. Even if we can save you, let's say 20 minutes a day by narrowing it down to the most important pieces, we consider that a win. Okay. So there's quite a bit of that sort of work that we do with anomaly detection, etc. And we'll be rolling out more incremental benefits on that as well.
Do you guys have to train the AI to work the way that you want it to, or is it just prompts? Is it just the right prompts like in Chat GPT?
So prompting only goes a certain way, right? So let's say you ask a question. Let's take a hypothetical example, right? What is the lifetime value of customers that I've acquired in the last 30 days? If it gives you an answer, that answer has to be accurate, because if the answer is not accurate, you're most likely not going to be using that service after that, because it might lead you down a decision-making path that is suboptimal. So prompting is a great way to give control to the user, but without a human in the loop who is making sure that those questions are being answered with the right possible answers is the real deal, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. I'm excited to see like what the AI stuff can do. Is it possible for like the AI to, like, could you replace there's some AI tool, I won't call them out by name since we're talking about replacing, but there's like there's some AI pricing tools out there for Amazon. Like if you have the data and you have the AI, can you kind of recreate your own AI tool?
We could. It depends on what use case we want to go after first and which ones we want to go after later.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So our initial focus is not necessarily. So let's say there is a ML or AI based application that is looking at pricing changes and it is recommending what pricing adjustments you need to make. Now, we can make a recommendation saying, hey, this is the recommendation, but then you also have to go make that change on Amazon automatically, right? Rather than sending that notification when you are away from your laptop and 2 hours have passed before the recommendation was delivered but acted upon in Amazon, right? So that's not necessarily a problem statement that we're looking to go after immediately, but it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility for us to achieve.
And so as we get close to wrapping up here, I think there's some things I've heard you say repeatedly that I think would be of value to the members and other, similar entrepreneurs that handle a lot of their own data to just kind of understand how you define these. Like if I had 40 KPIs, how would I break those down into tier 1, 2, and 3 KPIs? Like how would you go about defining those to segment those?
Yeah, it's usually a discussion with the seller and trying to understand how they look at their business, right? Because at the end of the day, we are enablers for them to make better business decisions. That's what data and decision support is all about, is making sure the data is available for the smart people to take the right decisions. So when we talk about tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, there are some that are very common, like sales, inventory, tacos, ACOS, so on and so forth. But beyond that, it's always a discussion with the customers and understand their business, seeing what metrics that they use today on a regular basis, which are the ones they always wanted to have automated on an hourly basis, which ones that they look on a weekly basis. A lot of times we talk to sellers who have a very manual process of putting together a P&L statement. And even if a P&L statement is available, they don't have that P&L statement available at an ASIN level, right? So I would say having an overall business P&L statement would be tier 1, having that at an ASIN level would be tier 2, because those are micro optimizations that you can now do, wherein you can pick up, let's say Q3 this year, I'm going to be focusing my sales strategy to try and change the P&L equation for this particular category of my products, right? So those level of micro optimizations are possible. And what I always recommend my customers, and this is something that we have immensely benefited from, is setting up very clear objectives, goals, and key results for the business, and match that with the data that you have and see how we are doing.
Nice.
So the objectives can be set by the humans. The results are available from the dashboards that we can provide to you. So that way you can take, let's say, a micro optimization or a few micro optimization exercises in a quarter, try and move them up, and then over a period of time, all that cumulatively adds up to a lot of revenue.
Okay. Nice. So it's not necessarily level of like this metric's more important than this metric, so we're going to put it in tier 1. It's kind of like you're further breaking down something at a more micro level. Okay.
Correct.
And what about
because it also depends on the product. Yeah, it also depends on the product they're selling, the categories in which they're operating, right? Some are very marketing intense and volume heavy. So inventory management becomes even more important. And some are higher value tickets that are available. So how their ads are performing becomes critical in those scenarios, right? So it really depends on the kind of business the customer's in.
And what about, so I heard you say this a couple times, the problem statement, and I heard this too during the onboarding process. Like if I was going to say, hey guys, I want to track this metric, and I think they would ask, they wanted to like put me through this kind of workflow that had to do with a problem statement, I believe, to really get on the same page. Can you talk a little bit about that and how it can help people?
Sure. So a lot of times customers come and ask us, hey, I need this KPI automated, for example, right? And our default response to that generally is, why do you track it? What are you trying to get out of tracking this metric? What decisions do you take by tracking this metric, so on and so forth? Because what we have found over the years is that sellers who are not already into customized data solutions may not always know exactly what is possible, right? So they may have used a turnkey application or a turnkey solution, which gives you a nice, pretty dashboard with consolidated data, so on and so forth. But because we are pulling whatever data Amazon is making available into a data warehouse and blending all of that data together, a lot of new ways of looking at the business are also available. And that's where during our onboarding process, we try to understand how it is that you're looking at your business and see if there are any additional things that might be applicable based on the problem that you're looking to solve, and sort of introduce that to you and see if that's something you would be interested in.
Okay.
Right? So one thing I tell my customers is, no matter what question you have, you just ask the question, don't filter it out. And let us figure out, if we don't already know how to solve that problem, let us figure out how to solve that data problem for you. And if it's not possible, we're going to come back and tell you that it is not. But if it is possible, we're going to make it happen.
Awesome. Cool. So yeah, we got the tiered KPIs, we got the problem statement. I always think it's good to just kind of like have an understanding of kind of the basics, of what seems like basics, in your area, when we try to navigate those things. Because like in our group, and I think for a lot of entrepreneurs in general, you get people who they try to do everything, whether they're just wired that way or they just want to kind of understand things before they outsource it. And in that's usually the bucket I fall into. Because I did think about doing it myself, and I did learn about the different steps, getting the data, then you have to organize the data and set up the tables so you can visualize it the way that you want, but then you have to create something that's constantly doing that on a regular basis, right? And that's where I think a lot of management comes in.
Correct.
So, I think maybe if you, before we wrap up, like touch on, why not do it yourself, right? Like why go with a provider like you guys that specializes in this versus doing it yourself?
Yeah, in fact, we have quite a few customers who have tried to build support for the APIs themselves, and had given up after spending a ton of money.
Yeah.
And there are a few reasons, and I've blogged about this quite extensively as well. Writing support, if there is an Amazon seller or an agency or an aggregator, they are good at a seller's good at sourcing the product, designing the product, and positioning the product. The agency is good at marketing these products. The aggregators are good operators trying to, drive a profitable group of brands and products together, right? Adding support for APIs would mean hiring software developers to do the job. Oftentimes, it's a case of, okay, it shouldn't be very difficult, so I'm going to hire some software developers to build the APIs. And the first version comes out after a period of time. And by the time you're live, the APIs will start to change. The behavior starts to change. And now again, you're in this loop of getting them to support the APIs that have been built. And in some cases, APIs get deprecated, right? So new APIs getting added, the current APIs that are changing, APIs that are getting deprecated. For instance, last year, a bunch of Amazon inventory reports got deprecated and they were being replaced with inventory ledger reports. And all that our customers had to do is go back to the UI, click another button, the new reports are available for them in the setup, right? So building it in-house is not only expensive because you have to pay somebody to do it, pay someone to test all of that and roll it out, but it also time that it takes up. A customer that's working with us might be up and running in a few days to maybe a few weeks, depending on the problems that they're looking to solve. Whereas if you're trying to build everything from scratch with either internal or external resources, it can take months and success is not guaranteed, right? In our case, we almost can guarantee success, provided that the customer has a very clear understanding of what it is that they're looking for. The success is almost guaranteed.
Man, yeah, that API thing you mentioned, I was like, yeah, that like getting deprecated, and like I couldn't imagine figuring that out, and then it gets deprecated, right? And then it's like, yeah, that is yeah,
Just to
that would
give
be
you
difficult.
an example, right? There are at least 8 or 9 people internally who have been working for the last, I would say, 3.5, 4 years just on Amazon APIs.
Wow.
And we still feel like, you know what, we could do more. We could optimize it more. We could speed up the replication process more.
Wow.
Maybe we could increase that accuracy by like 0.01%. So there are always those optimizations and things like that we're doing. And that's really the benefit of going with a provider like us. And the best part is we put the data in your data warehouse, so you have complete control.
Yeah. Awesome. Krishna, do you speak on any of this stuff? Like, do you do any blogging or like, LinkedIn, or just kind of sharing your knowledge on data anywhere?
I am on LinkedIn. Haven't been actively writing much, so that's something that I'm looking forward to doing more of this year. But we do blog. Our blogs are available on our website at Saras, SARAS Analytics.com. We have a nice booklet of Amazon KPIs that we have published. Many of them sellers may already know and look at, but many they might have always wanted but couldn't get to. So if someone's interested in it, I would definitely encourage them to go check out our blog or connect with me on LinkedIn.
Okay. Awesome, man. Yeah, I'll definitely check out that blog and get connected with you, man. I appreciate you coming on and just like sharing some basic stuff, with us. I think it's going to be very helpful to the members. And for anyone who's thinking about working with, your team, I can vouch that they're great. Like we have our weekly meeting scheduled. The guy that's scheduled to our account, great communicator, always on top of it. And they're working with us in Slack, which is very helpful. I know a lot of members work actively in Slack. So like that's been real convenient for us, and really just like good people to work with. I mean, like I actually enjoy getting on the calls with your guys, and they're just very helpful and been very informative, for someone like me that's going through something new.
That's awesome to hear, Nick, and I appreciate the feedback, and I'll certainly pass that on to my team.
Yeah,
Certainly,
absolutely.
I'd love to catch up again and see what else we can do for you. Look at some interesting use cases and see if we can really make a positive difference to your business.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And for any of those that want to reach out to you, maybe have any questions or are interested in the service, where would they find you?
My email is Krishna, Krishna, at sarasanalytics.com. Or they can find me on LinkedIn. Just look for Krishna Poda, Poda is my last name. And I'd be happy to just chat data.
All right. Sounds good, Krishna. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thank you, Nick. Thanks for having me. Have a good day.